You are joining the STEP Annual Performance Reporting webinar. Welcome, welcome. We'll make sure everybody has their audio on, and then we'll get started. We've got a whole bunch of information to go through. All righty, looks like everyone is in and has their audio on. So let's get started. Welcome. You are again joining your STEP Annual Performance Reporting webinar. Let's go ahead and play the disclaimer, and then we can get in to the meat of everything.
Yes.
Oh, shucks. Sorry about that. Let's do that again. Oh, and now it's not going to do it. Sorry, I guess I'll be reading it today. So here's the disclaimer. This presentation was produced under the U.S. Department of Education, contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises Incorporated. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. All right, now that we've got disclaimed, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce again your STEP Program Officer, Linda Brake. Hi, Linda.
Hi, greetings, everybody. Thanks for attending today, and I'm sure you'll get some wonderful information on completing your APR report.
Awesome. And then of course, we have Inchin Lin. She's on as well to help us through the STEP APR. She's your normal sort of go-to TA coach for STEP. Hi, Inchin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. And thank you, Alani, so much for taking over with this presentation. I have been away visiting family for a bit of time, which is why Alani will be doing this today. So thank you, Alani. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Awesome. All right, so let's get into today's agenda. Again, we've got a bunch of content to cover, and so we want to make sure we're trying to get you out through this and out of it in a timely manner. And so for today, we are going to be going and diving into your APR. We are going to be going over the cover sheet and executive summary, part A, B, C, and we'll also be able to take questions throughout the presentation. And so if a question pops in your head, please go ahead and put it in the chat. We will take pauses throughout this presentation to answer those questions. And then again, at the end, we'll have a time for questions at the end again, just in case maybe you forgot a question and it came to mind. Very important, put this in your calendar. Your STEP APR due date is April 26, 2024. The due date time is at 4:29:59 p.m. Eastern time. Now, if you're on Eastern time, then that's your time. If you're in any other time zone, you want to make sure that you are calibrating your time zone towards with the Eastern time. You also may want to actually make your actual due date maybe a couple of days or maybe even a week prior to the actual due date of this of the APR, just to give you some time in case there's any technical glitches or questions that you have along the way. But the drop dead deadline again is April 26th. And so here is sort of like the entire APR process timeline. Again, this APR is due on April 26th. Then you have your end of the grant year in September. And then if you have to do an APR update, that will be due October 24th, 2024. Again, take time to put down these dates on your piece of paper and then transfer that to your calendar. It's always good to keep a reminder, and we have all these automated tools so you can go ahead and like give yourself a reminder maybe a month or 3 weeks prior to the due dates, particularly that APR due date, APR update due date, sorry, to make sure that you are submitting everything on time. So let's jump into the content. So what is the purpose of the APR? The APR is a federal grant requirement, and it is the primary document submitted annually that allows you to document your progress towards meeting your project objectives. This is a really important communication tool that you are sharing with your program officer that really helps them determine your substantial progress. This information will inform a continuation award for decision. It is a very important document and a place where you can share everything that's going on with your program and your project. We've created an APR checklist, and this APR checklist is a tool that will help to ensure that you have successfully provided all the information and the reporting documents required. It's a great tool to look at and review prior to starting the actual APR process. And then once you've finished everything, it's another great tool to sort of like go through everything to check to make sure you have the right dates, that all the documents you need are submitted, that all the different parts of a particular form are completed before you actually press that submit button. Now, where are you submitting all this information? This is the landing page for the G6 system where you're going to be submitting your annual performance report. If you are a new grantee, then this will become your norm. If you have had if you've done an APR last year, then you'll notice that this homepage is different. But once you get into the system, it looks a lot like the G5 system that you're familiar with. Be aware of the scheduling of the system, because sometimes it will be doing some maintenance and some reporting. So you always want to make sure you're checking that. You also want, again, like I said earlier, is note any time zone information and making sure that you're calibrating to your own time zone. You want to make sure that you're checking out all this information. And in particular, here in this red box, you'll notice the help desk information and options for reaching the help desk. You may call them directly or email, and then there's the standard hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, Eastern time. So make sure you are aware of that, except of course on federal holidays. Now, this help desk is related to any questions regarding sort of the tech submission, any tech problems you have in submitting your APR, any tech problems you have maybe accessing and getting into your own system in G6. That would be why you would call this help desk. If you have a question regarding maybe what do I put in my ratio or in my section A, or how am I completing my budget form? That would be a question for either your TA team or your program officer, not the help desk within G6. Please note that G6 system can be finicky and likes to time out. And so one of the pro tips we like to provide is that you gather all the information that you need first and then copy it into the G6 system. Again, you want to make sure that you are watching the hours of operation and scheduling that appropriately based on your time zone. So here is one of our first forms. This is your ED 524 reporting form, okay? And we're going to be throwing that in the chat. This is really what we would consider is like your cover sheet. The ED 524 reporting form are the documents you need for your annual performance report, okay? Be sure that you're checking at the upper right-hand corner that it has the correct due date. That expiration date should be 07/31/2024, so July 31st, 2024. You want to make sure you have the correct form. We've also posted the current ED 52 form in the chat box. Also, all of these forms are available on your STEP Padlet. So let's go ahead and walk through this form. we'll also be going over, before we jump into that, we'll also be going over all of these different forms throughout this session. And then here at the bottom is a link where you can actually access the forms again. So there are multiple places in which you can access all the forms required for your APR. But let's dive into this cover sheet. So this is a screenshot of the cover sheet that you'll need for every annual performance report. Be sure that you're using the most up-to-date form by checking that date at the top. For item number 1, this is where you want to enter your unique PR number. Now, some of you may have multiple OIE grants, so you want to make sure you're using the correct PR number. If we look at item number 7, you want to make sure that you're entering the full correct reporting period for your grant. And on the screen right there, you see the reporting period is from October 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. So you want to make sure that's the date that you're going to be putting in that section. And then if you look at item number 8, item number 8 is about the budget periods contained in the APR. And there are 3 line items, A, B, and C, that will break down in the next slide. So we'll get a little bit more into what are we doing? Sorry, what you're reporting in the different sections of item number 8. So here we are. And so let's go through this. These amounts should reflect what you've actually spent or obligated and drawn down. It should match what has been drawn down in G6 as a reporting period end date. So right here for 8A, for fiscal year 2022 grantees, this should include the total expenditures from last grant year. Okay, so again, this was last grant year. That's what you should know was your total expenditures. For fiscal year 2023 grantees, this should be blank because this is the first year of your grant. So you shouldn't have anything in row A. For 8B, there with the little blue arrow, all grantees, you will be reporting your expenditures for between October 1st, 2023 and March 31st, 2024. So you should report all the expenditures for this current reporting period. And then here's an easy one. For 8C, this should all be left blank for any grantee, whether you're fiscal year 22 or fiscal year 23. That should just remain blank. These amounts should actually reflect what you have actually spent or obligated and drawn down. And so this is a really great item that you want to note and maybe be in conversation with your budget or fiscal person. All right, moving on down the cover sheet, we have item number 9. So you want to be sure that you're entering the most up-to-date indirect cost information. Sometimes your indirect cost rates expire or other details may change with a renewed indirect cost rate. So you really want to make sure you're double checking to make sure you have the most up-to-date information in item 9. And please don't skip it. You need to make sure you're completing 9A through D as appropriate. And also, you can provide a copy of your valid indirect cost rate agreement, again, that covers the time period of the reporting period, which is 10/1/23 to 9/30/24. So that's for the entire grant year. I want to make sure that that's up to date and is valid. Moving on to item number 10, this question asks about human subject and IRB. You should be checking NN for number 10. Then moving on to item number 11. This is the last item on this first page, but it's very important. And it's about data privacy. Everyone will check yes, and also include the corresponding policy as evidence within your own policy. And so that gets attached as an attachment into, and we'll go through that in your section C attachments. Sometimes these policies are found in your employee handbook or student handbooks, or sometimes you might have a policy manual. You want to make sure that you are uploading that policy along with your APR. And make sure that it is approved as well. So this is the back of the cover sheet. And there are two really important details to note here. Item number 12 is about performance measure status. In 12A, for your annual performance report, you'll be indicating yes or no. And I don't think any of you, yeah, indicating yes or no for the question about complete data or performance measure. Now, how do you know whether you're answering yes or no? So you would answer yes when you are stating that you have all the data and it's all been reported and completed in section A. Then you would check yes. You would check no if you are reporting like 999 in your section A. And 999, we'll get into that a little bit more, means that you don't have the data yet, but you anticipate having the data by the end of the grant year. So if anywhere in your section A, you are reporting 999, then you need to click no for this item number 12. Also, what you want to make sure is that you are, once you've completed this cover sheet, that you download it and take this to get your authorized representative signature. That is a requirement for this cover sheet. Another helpful tip as it relates to the cover sheet is you want to sort of get this done as soon as the APR reporting period opens up in G6. So that's one of the first things you want to do is go in, download your cover sheet, complete it, take it to your authorized representative and have them sign it. And the reason why we recommend this is because normally your authorized representative is sort of like the person who is maybe running multiple grant programs, or is your tribal council chair, or maybe an executive director, and they're sort of very busy doing all their other things. And so sometimes we find that this can be a real barrier to grantees successfully submitting their APR on time. And so if you get this done, get this on their desk, you won't have to like worry about like doing it last minute. So don't wait till the last minute to get this done. We're going to move on to a little thing that we're going to be doing, activity that we're going to be doing throughout this APR session. It's called quiz time. And for that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
All right. Yeah, so as we go through today, just to make sure that all of this is making sense and clicking for you, we will have a couple of fast finger quizzes going on. So let's get into our first one. Just the part you've just been looking at. We're going to talk about question 12. If you had 67% of students increase their reading proficiency by at least 5 points as measured by a beginning and end of your benchmark, that's what you're doing on your project measure. You administer the benchmark at the beginning of the year, then you administer it again at the end of the year in May. So, given that, what should you mark on number 12? Yes or no? I'm going to pop that one up. And remember that 12, if you are looking, is the one asking about whether you're going to have all of your performance measure data. Oh, y'all have got the fast fingers today. Already all in, very good. So let's see, we're a little torn on this one. So you will actually be marking no. The reason you'll be marking no is because there's no way for you to have complete data yet because the end of your benchmark is in May. You'll have complete data in May, which is after this reporting period, which is totally fine. There is nothing wrong with marking no on this. So you'll mark no, and then on the APR update in the fall, you'll update it. All right, let's look at number 2. You're a fiscal year 23 grantee, which all but one of you are. Okay. And so let's look at this budget as a fiscal year 23 grantee. You drew down $86,000 as of the end of March. What goes in 8A and 8B? So I'll pop that one up. 8A and 8B. I know this one has 2 questions. Get everybody's answers in. Okay. Let's go ahead and look. See what everybody thought. So it looks like on 8A, we're thinking we either put 0 or leave it blank. It's actually leave it blank because it's not that you had no expenditures in the previous budget period. Let's say you didn't even have a previous budget period. So you're actually just going to leave it blank and move on. Then for 8B, it's asking about your drawdowns, and you all got it completely correct. You're going to put 86,000 and then move right along. So great job on that. And then we have a few kind of top tips, things that we find most helpful in completing your cover sheet. The first is, as soon as you get done with this webinar, maybe start typing the email right now. Email that budget office and let them know that you need your G5 drawdown report on April 1st. Because they have lots of other things going on. So if you don't get on their calendar, it may take a while to get that information and hold up your reporting. So go ahead and let them know right now what it is that you need. Second tip, kind of the same idea. Those authorized representatives can be hard to get signatures for. So as soon as you complete this cover sheet, send it off to them and get them to sign it. Don't wait until the very end when you're done with your entire report, because then often that'll cause you to turn it in late. And then number 3, just double check whether you think it is or think it isn't. Double check that that indirect cost rate has not expired and you don't need to turn in some updated paperwork. And then we're on to the executive summary.
Okay. And I was just checking the chat and it doesn't look like there's any questions yet. So we'll move forward. Again, you're welcome to put your questions in the chat. Does anybody have a question they want to come off of mute since we're a small group? Yeah, okay. Let's move forward. Again, you're welcome to put your questions in the chat, and then as you see, we'll be taking a little breather and being able to review the chat to answer any of your questions. All right, so now on to the executive summary. So the executive summary, what's it all about? This section is really where you will be sharing your accomplishments and highlights, as well as any challenges. Really think about your project goals and intended outcomes. This section should be 1 to 2 pages, maximum 2 pages long. Okay, anything else that maybe is not able to fit within 2 pages can be articulated and shared in other parts of the APR. Really, this is like again, exactly what it says is a summary. So it should not be exactly the same language taken from maybe your section A or even your section C. It should really describe the extent to which your program was able to accomplish maybe your project objectives, maybe some things that you learned that were new learning that you hadn't anticipated. You know, sometimes we get into doing some work and maybe we've created some tools to measure impact or our performance, and we realize that it's actually that those tools are showing us a whole bunch of new information. Like, this is a great place to provide that overview of your project. If your project goals and objectives were not actually met, again, this is a great place to provide information around those challenges and what affected the project implementation. Also, a great place to put maybe you weren't able to achieve it, but you've sort of had to like do a pivot, and now you are seeing some success or seeing some movement, or maybe not seeing anything at all because you're just starting to pivot or implement maybe a new way of doing outreach or something. The program really, I'm sorry, this section should really, again, highlight the overall view of where your project is. Lastly, in your executive summary, OIE wants to know about any contributions your project has made as it relates to research, knowledge, practice, or policy. I know with STEP grants, you're doing a lot of like work with partners. Maybe you found this like unlikely partner that you think could really maybe benefit other OIE grantees. That would be a great new learning shared. Or maybe you've been able to develop some new policies as it relates to data sharing. Again, that's another great piece of information and new learning to share. We really want to make a note that you not copy and paste the narrative from your section A or vice versa. It should be really new information and really should be from an overview perspective. A sec, my slides have disappeared. Okay, well, that was a speedy one through the executive summary. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah.
So it's already time to fast finger in some more questions, but I know you have these. What is the page length maximum for the executive summary? So we're going to pop that one up. Is it that you want about a half a page, but no more than a page? 1 to 2 pages, or no more than 3? Just pop those answers in. Almost there. All right, let's go ahead and look at those who worked on this one. And it looks like we all agree 1 to 2 pages maximum, which is absolutely correct. Remember, if it's over 2 pages, we have other spots where you can put that additional information, but we want to keep it to about 1 to 2 pages for your executive summary. And I see, do we provide the report typed onto this page, or can we upload an executive summary? There's actually not a way to type your executive summary directly into G5. You have to type it on the Ed 524 form and then upload it. Good question. All right. So let's go to question 4. For one of your project goals, you haven't quite met your target, which is totally fine. Which of the following do you do when writing that executive summary? Write 999 because you need more data. Share the challenges meeting that project measure. Don't go into too much detail because you can do that later in another part of the report. Or discuss it, your progress towards it, and include a brief rationale for why you missed it. Which one are we going to do? I know this one's a little bit trickier. Go ahead and pop those answers in. And a few of you are like, gonna hold off on that one. A few more seconds. All right, let's check out. It looks like we had some that felt like we were going to discuss the project measure, some that write 999. It's actually option B. So we want to talk about what are those challenges that are getting in the way of us being completely successful, those things that are maybe hurdles that we've encountered and how we're working through those. We're not going to go into a ton of detail on the specific project measure because we want to do that in the explanation of progress in section A. So we're keeping it more big picture here in the summary, and we're going into those details in section A. All right, and we do have a few more tips for you though. On this executive summary, remember to stick to that 2-page limit because you could put all that extra info in section C. Section C's upload limit is quite large. And then don't just repeat your information from section A. Like I said, keep that summary higher level and then go into those specific details for your measures in section A. And then the last tip is really think about when you're writing this executive summary, that you're sitting down to tell somebody how the last 6 months of your project have gone. So imagine that you're sitting down for a coffee with Linda and she said, how's it going? And catch her up on the good and the not so good from the first 6 months of your project. So kind of keep that mindset, and I think it'll help you write a fabulous executive summary.
Yep. Okay, so I think Sarah answered, and looks like Casey also answered in the chat Mark's question. Again, that's a really great tip to like write it offline and then go ahead and you would attach the documents. Make sure you got all your Grammarly and your spell check going on, and you've articulated everything that you want in your executive summary. Sometimes I know some grantees actually complete their section A first and then go back and, like Sarah said, sit down and think about having a cup of coffee with Linda and reflecting on what they wrote in section A and then writing their executive summary. Awesome. So let's move on. We've been talking about section A, 99, all this stuff. So here we are. We're at really what I think is the heart of your APR, where you're really going to be providing more detail about what's going on with your actual grants. And so this is what it looks like. There is both a quantitative section where you're actually reporting numbers, as well as a qualitative section where you are sharing in narrative form information. We're going to dive into that to see exactly what those two sections. Sorry, my slides keep popping off the page. Okay, here we go. So let's look at this actual quantitative information that you'll be providing. One of the first things you want to determine is which performance measure am I reporting on? And so you really have two. One is your GEPRA and the other is your project measures. The GEPRA measures are those that are required by this grant. Your project measures are ones that you have developed as it relates to your specific project. And so one of the first things you want to do is go in and determine which of the measures you're reporting on, and then go ahead and select the appropriate measure, whether it's a GEPRA or project. Now that you know whether it's a GEPRA or project, if it's GEPRA, then those will automatically, this year, those are automatically going to be put into your section A. And so you don't have to mess with the language. You don't have to like copy and paste the exact language for your GEPRA measures. They will already be there. Now, for your project objectives, you need to make sure that you are either for fiscal year 2022 grantees that you are reporting the measures, the exact language from last year's measures. And for the STEP fiscal year 2023 new grantees, where you're finding these project measures is from your planner, from those approved project objectives that Linda got to look through, and you went through the process of getting them approved. We started on those project measures and looking at them at the Grant Leadership Academy in Washington. And then we went through a whole revision process and you got those approved. That's where you'll find the language for your project objectives is in that planner, because you know that the ones in that planner have been approved by Linda. Again, if you have any questions regarding your project objectives and whether or not they've been approved, you can contact either your OIE technical assistance team or Linda directly. So you want to go ahead and put that language there. And then you will be reporting your quantitative data. You will either be reporting in the target ratio as well as the actual ratio data. Again, it depends on which project measure, which measure you are reporting on, and we'll get a little bit more into that. Okay, as it relates to your GEPRA measures, again, like I said, this year, it's automatically going to be put into your section A, so you won't have to copy and paste your GEPRA language from another spreadsheet or from other information, maybe even your planner. It'll already be there. And so again, it'll show GEPRA measure, that type. And then for your GEPRA measures, you will only be reporting in the actual performance data ratio box. And so when you see these X's, there should be nothing there. Now, sometimes, and this is just a little like side tip, sometimes back in the day, G5, sometimes if you clicked on it, it would require you to put in a number. If it does that, just go ahead in this target section and put either 0/0 or 1/1, and we'll know that the system is requiring you to put something there, but that you were not intending, and you know that you're not supposed to be putting anything in the target. Where you will be reporting your GEPRA data is right here in this ratio box. Now, as it relates to your project measure text, again, you have to go to your planner, grab that language from your planner, and go ahead and copy and paste it here. You will be providing information into that target, and so you'll be providing what your target ratio will be, and then you'll be providing what the actual performance data is here in the actual performance data ratio box. Now, for either the GEPRA or the project measure, if you currently do not have the data, but you anticipate having the data by the end of this grant year, then you will be reporting 999, okay? So let's look at your GEPRA measures. I'm sure, again, you are very familiar with this. These are your GEPRA measures for fiscal year 2022 cohort of STEP grantee. This GEPRA measure, any GEPRA measures with an asterisk must be reported by fiscal year 2022 cohort. And then fiscal year 2022 grantee must also report on D and F. Again, some of the GEPRA measures you see will be pre-populated for you in G6 and may not apply to you. If that GEPRA measure does not apply to you and your grant, please leave it blank. But if the system won't allow a blank, like I had mentioned earlier, please go ahead and put 0/1 and explain that it does not apply to you in the explanation of progress. For fiscal year 2023, here are your GEPRA measures. Again, the GEPRA measures should be pre-populated for you in G6. If any of the GEPRA measures does not apply to you and your grant, go ahead and leave it blank. But if the system won't allow you to leave it blank, again, please put a 0/1 and explain that this does not apply to you in the explanation of progress. So next, we'll go over how you will report on each measure. All right, so one of the other new things with this year's reporting is if there is a denominator that is shared across the board as it relates to the GEPRA measures, then those will also be pre-populated. But the numerator, again, would be the number that you would need to be providing. And so for this measure, it would be the number of capacity building activities conducted by the TEA. And so you would go ahead and put that number there. Now, maybe you don't have all that data collected. If you don't, but you will have that by the end of the grant year, you want to go ahead and put 999 on the top. For this measure, again, we see that we have, again, a shared denominator, so that will already be put in there. and you will be reporting on the number of capacity building activities for the TEA. Again, here is a shared denominator, and the number you will be reporting on is the number of educational programs administered by the grantee. So, I'm sorry, for some of you, you may not be administering any educational programs directly by March 31st, or this may not be a part of your approved grant proposal at all. In that case, you want to make sure that you're entering the 0 over the 1, and then really explain this in the explanation of progress. For this one, again, a shared denominator, and then you're going to be reporting the number of teachers recruited or retained. To determine the top number in this reporting ratio, you will count the number of teachers recruited or retained to specifically support the STEP grant, even if those individuals are employed by another agency. This only applies, again, to Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, but if you will not have data for this GEPRA yet, put 0 over 1 or 999. So again, if you're putting 0 over 1, that means you don't anticipate having any data by the end of this grant year. However, if maybe between March 31st, 2024 and the end of the grant year in September, you will have collected some data regarding this measure, then you're going to report 999. And then you'll be required then to do an APR update, where you'll explain and provide the updated information. And we'll get into what that looks like later on in this presentation. Again, here you are a shared denominator, so it would be 1 on the bottom, and the number of actions that you've taken as it relates to opening a charter school. If this, again, is not you and you're not reporting this, then go ahead and put 0 over 1 and explain it in the explanation of progress. So for GEPRA E and GEPRA G do not apply to any of you. So if they show up in this section A form of G6, just leave it blank or put 0 over 1. So next we'll go over some examples of GEPRA and project measure reporting. So here we go. So here are the first 2 GEPRA measures, A and B. Just a reminder that GEPRA wording and ratio denominator should already be pre-populated when you open up section A. This will indicate, so here are your performance measures. Both of these are GEPRA. This is the GEPRA, this is the measurement type is, again, GEPRA. And you will only be reporting information in the actual performance data ratio column. As you can see here with the 2 circles with the line through, there should be nothing in the target section of this section A. So for GEPRA number A, the number of capacity building activities offered by the TEA or SEA or LEA, these are the trainings, technical assistance in the areas related to tribal history, language, or culture. This is really our fictional grantee or our pretend grantee executed 20 distinct activities. So they reported 20 over 1. You will report the total number of activities over the number 1. As well as in GEPRA B, the number of capacity building activities. This, again, you will be counting the number of activities offered, and we'll use that as the top number. And then we get to your explanation of progress. You will be including an explanation of progress for each measure. And so oftentimes grantees will put, like you see, 2 GEPRA measures here because there is space within section A. When you're in the explanation of progress, you really want to identify the explanation of progress for each GEPRA. And so as you see here in this example, they've at the beginning of the explanation of progress, they've identified 1A, so that this information is related to the GEPRA in 1A. And that really just helps your program officer read and understand the explanation of progress as it relates to the GEPRA measure. All right, and here are again GEPRA measures C and D. You might actually have these in separate tables, and that's totally fine. We're just showing you them together because of the space and making sure that you can see the entire document. Again, you are only reporting numbers in your actual performance data ratio column. And wanting to make sure that, again, you are including information in the explanation of progress. And I want to highlight, even if you maybe don't have the data, maybe you're reporting 0/1, you won't have the data this year, you anticipate having it after the end of the grant year, which is September 30th, you still need to provide explanation of progress and talk about what are the processes you're putting in place to collect that information and when you anticipate having that. Also, if you're reporting 999, that doesn't mean that the explanation of progress is left blank. You still need to provide information in the explanation of progress, and we'll get into what that information will be in upcoming slides. I feel like I keep saying that, in upcoming slides. So here's a screenshot of what your project status chart may look like when you're including your actual project measures. And so this is an example of some project measures. You again want to take the exact language from either your previous year's APR or from your planner if you're a fiscal year 2023 grantee. You will indicate these measures as being project measures. Again, these are measures that are unique to your actual project, and so you came up with them. And for project measures, you will be including data in both the target and actual performance data ratio columns. All right. And then, of course, you will be including information in your explanation of progress. As you can see here in 1B, you do have the reporting of 999. So what 1B is reporting is that the target is 20/20. But what they're reporting right now is they don't have a complete data yet, but they do anticipate having that data come September 30th, the end of the grant year. And so they are reporting 999. However, within the explanation of progress, they're talking about all the work they're doing as it relates to that project measure. They're talking about how they're going to be completing and collecting that data, what they're doing with that data, who's reviewing that data, and we'll get into that more. So that was a lot. Let's just take a little breath and stretch and provide you some reminders. So reporting incomplete data. Again, I keep reiterating, and I'm sorry I sound like a broken record, but the data that you're reporting in Section A, actually, as well as the entire APR, should be for the current reporting period of October 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. Data that is unavailable now, but will be available by the last day of the grant year, should be reported as 999. If the data will not be available or exist by the end of the last day of the grant year, which is September 30th, 2024, then you will report 0/1. At the end of your grant year, which is September 30th, 2024, you will be, there will be an APR that will be due on October 24th, 2024. This is really an opportunity to update your Section A data and must update any measure reported as 999. So if you're reporting 999, just make a mental note that you will have to be submitting an APR. And this APR will be submitted via an online survey. So this will not be in the G6 system. It will sort of stand outside of the G6 system. We'll be sending you that information and providing you more training during talking circles or office hours, or even a separate section on this as we near that date. And this is really an opportunity, again, for you to close out all the data for Section A. And it will only be, you will only need to provide an update for that Section A. It's not a full-blown, APR again. So here's where I was talking about your explanation of progress and what you want to make sure is in there. Your explanation of progress should be connected again to your quantitative data. It will demonstrate how you have met or made progress towards that measure. If it was not met, you want to make sure you provide a detailed explanation to why, and describe any steps and schedule for addressing the problem or issue. So like I said, an example is maybe you were doing a particular, maybe with like, let's say the activities that you were providing, you wanted to do some outreach, and maybe, the strategy you were planning on doing wasn't working. And so you sort of need to like pivot and maybe change that, share all that information. So we were doing this strategy around outreach and it wasn't working. And so now we're planning for the remaining part of the year to do, strategy B, and explain all of that. What data, you also want to provide what data were collected and when they were collected. Really kind of dig into your evaluation methods and how data was collected and was analyzed. And then briefly describe related activities and accomplishments as it relates again to that measure. If data are not available, include all available narrative information and provide date when data will be available. So again, maybe you are reporting 0/1, and because you won't be getting the data until, let's say, November of 2024. That's fine. Go ahead and say, while we don't have the data this year, we are anticipating getting that data in November of 2024. And this is the reason why. Maybe it's coming from another state agency. Maybe you have to wait until all data is compiled and it's part of a larger report. Provide the information why. So when you're going through your explanation of progress, here are some look-fors. Provide details about the reporting of the quantitative data. Again, that should be, try to make it easy for your program officer to see by identifying the explanation of progress as connected to measure in the 1A box and then 1B box. And so again, it just helps the reader sort of follow along and make the connection between the quantitative data and the qualitative information you're providing in the explanation of progress. Clearly make sure it's linked to the listed measure. Again, that's another strategy. Explain how the data is collected and compiled for reporting. If there were any challenges, describe plans to address them. And then if you're reporting 999 or 0/1, you still need to provide an explanation of progress, including an explanation of when the data will be available. Whew, okay, that's the heart of the work. Let's take a breather and we'll move on to our next quiz time with Sarah.
Yeah, so now that you know everything there is to know about Section A, we'll have a little quiz. So let's say that your project measure is that you're going to maintain 80% partner approval ratings each year on the annual partner survey. So the survey is going to be conducted in June. So let's start with, for this particular measure, where are we going to be reporting this data? And what are we going to report? So I'm actually going to let you put this answer in the chat. So what would you write in the box? It's a free response question. What might you write in that box to report this data? Mull it over a minute. Think it through. Okay. Linda's willing. This is Linda's first reporting season too, so she's joining you here. She went out on a limb, join her. You see Mark sharing his thoughts. Anybody else want to jump out there with what you think you would do on this one? All right, let's go ahead and do the big reveal. All right, so first off, this is a project measure. So that's important to know because we need both a target and an actual. So our target is 80%. Since we report in ratios, that's 80 over 100. And just like Mark said, we don't have the data yet. So it's 999 over 999 with a great explanation detailing those activities.
Awesome.
All right, let's go to our next one. All right, so the XYZ program will engage in sustainability planning by meeting with tribal leaders 4 times a year to develop a joint financial planning document. You met with tribal leaders 5 times already this year. How might you report this project measure? Think that one over. Okay, you get that answer in. Remember, we have no prizes, but there are also no consequences to the quizzes. Just a time for you to practice and try it out. I'll even give you a clue that there are actually 2 correct answers to this one. So you have double the odds of being correct. All right, target 5 over 4. Okay. Anybody else? Make sure everybody has time to type in whatever you're thinking might be it. All right, let's go ahead and reveal. All right, so our target, oh, and right as Mark was saying his target, okay. Yeah, so the target is 4 over 4. You wanted to meet with them 4 times. The actual can be, as we shared here, 5 out of 4, showing that you actually overachieved your goal. The alternative that would actually be completely fine too is if you know, well, I've already met with them 5 times, but I plan to meet with them 3 more. Well, then that would mean that your data is not complete because you're planning to meet with them some more times. So you could even report 999 over 999 if you know that there's going to be some additional data in the next 6 months. But if you know that that's all you're going to be doing, or you think that's all you're going to be doing, then this is exactly how you would report it with that 5 over 4.
Awesome.
Looks like Mark is our Section A superstar. All right. Question 7, we're back to the poll time. So I'm going to pop that up. Which of these is keyword not a good tip for writing your explanation of progress? Should you keep your response brief and to the point? Tell the story behind your quantitative data. Use section C for any information that won't fit in the box. Make sure to include an explanation of progress for all your measures, even those with no data currently. Which one is not the tip of the day? Fast finger in those answers. It's our last quiz question of section A. All right. Let me see. couple more seconds if anyone else wants to chime in. Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and end that poll and I'll share with you. So we had a couple for A and a couple for B, but I'll tell you the answer is A. We don't want you to be brief. We do want you to be the point. We want you to be on topic, but we're not looking for brief. Okay, we want you to give us lots of detail. I always say a robust explanation of progress. Don't leave me with any questions. Tell me all about it. So that is going to be your not great reporting tip. But we do have some great reporting tips for you. So first, really just double check before you submit that you have all your GEPRA and all your project measures in section A. And then go back into the slide deck, which we're going to send to you, and make sure you're reporting in the way in which you've been guided to report. So just double check that before you hit that submit. Secondly, write your explanation of progress outside of G5. You can write it in your project planner. We have some mock-ups for you there. You can write it in just like a Word document, but write it somewhere else. This allows for two really important things. One, you could do spelling and grammar check. G5 does not have a spelling or grammar check. And so it's easy to make typos and maybe accidentally write something you didn't mean to. And secondly, G5 doesn't save your work, and it's notorious for timing out. And when it times out, all your hard work floats away. So if you've been toiling away writing this amazing explanation of progress, and it times out and eats it, you're going to have reporting depression. And we don't want you to suffer from reporting depression this reporting season. So write it somewhere else where even if it accidentally eats it, you just copy and paste it back in and be happy. And finally, I know it seems like we've said this a million times, but don't slack on those explanations of progress. This is really your chance to tell the story behind your data. So make sure and tell the whole story. Don't leave this opportunity on the table. And that wraps up section A.
Yeah. We've climbed the mountain. We've climbed the mountain and we handled and gone through section A, and now we're coming back down the hill into section B. Looks like we've covered any of the questions. I feel like I may have lost some of you during that long section A. So just kind of maybe stand up, shake yourself, get your brain flowing back, get your blood flowing back into your brain. And because I know I need to do that. And then let's move on to section B. Again, we're coming back down the hill. We've covered, that's the lion and most important part of your grant. But here's the second most important of your APR, which is your budget information, your section B. This is where you're really going to be making the connect between your activities and your expenditures. And so we have this section B here. And thanks, Inchin, she's put that form up into your chat so you can grab that. Now, what goes into this section? In this section, you're going to be providing a narrative of your spending for the entire grant period. This section should expand as you type onto the form. So don't worry that it looks like just such a small space. Ideally, this section, you want to organize it by budget category. That, again, really helps you as well as your program officer to really help organize your writing. Because I know budgets, we could be all over the place with all the things you probably had to deal with as it relates to your budget, but organize it based on the categories, your budget categories. So here are some reminders about what you will need to report in this budget section. In your forms, you should be reporting the funds expended or obligated, even if it's not yet reflected in G6 through the last day of the reporting period. The reporting period for each grantee cohort, again, are right there in the screen. This is why we recommend maintaining your tracking expenses, as it can sometimes be a little bit different or take some time for your fiscal or budget office to do to post and do drawdown expenses. You want to also communicate in the narrative section of section B, your drawdown frequency. OIE really recommends that at a minimum, you should be doing drawdowns quarterly. But if it could occur more frequently and on a consistent basis, then that is really what's recommended. And so this is a great time again to get to sit with your budget team to go over your numbers with their numbers in order to make sure that you're reporting it all correctly. You will want to describe any challenges you faced and make sure that you are addressing that in this narrative section, as well as you may be, the APR time is a great time to not just take stock of where you are as it relates to your GEPR and your project measures and all the activities you plan, but also where your standing is and your position is as relates to expending your funds. And so as much as you get into collecting and spending time and looking at all the information programmatically as far as your activities, you should spend an equal amount of time looking at your budget and reflecting, because you may see some trends, like maybe you brought on staff later than you expected. And so maybe you're going to have some carryover, an anticipated carryover in your budget. It may be a good time to maybe think about submitting a budget revision after you've submitted your APR and starting to have those discussions within your team to identify where you may potentially be requesting moving of funds. Also, if you're going to be having any, if you, even by doing that, you anticipate having carryover funds, you may want to, this is a great place to give your program officer a heads up about, any carryover funds. The goal here really is to take this time to readjust, to make sure you're spending all your funds in the grant year that it's allocated. Also here, you want to see if any spending isn't going on as planned and what's not happening as it relates to any carryover that you're anticipating. You may also need to describe any changes you wish to make in the grant's activities for the next budget period and how that affects the budget. So like I had mentioned in the example before, if you are changing maybe an outreach strategy and that's going to require maybe some additional supplies and you maybe have expended all your supplies, this may be a good place to, again, give your program officer heads up into what you're thinking about. Now, your APR is not a place to submit your budget revision. We do see some people who do sort of tag this on. That's a separate process, but you want to use the APR to really, again, take stock and to determine your plan moving forward as it relates to your budget. Budget revisions, again, may be submitted at any time throughout the grant year if you need to make changes, but like it says in the bottom, the APR does not replace submitting a budget revision to Linda. That's a whole separate process. But it should inform if you are going to do a budget revision, it should inform that. And so this is what I mean by organizing the narrative by your budget categories. And so, we have all the sort of standard budget categories of personnel, fringe, supplies. And so if you use that as your header, then you can articulate any information that you want to provide as it relates to personnel, to all the different budget categories. So for example, if you hired some staff late, you've maybe had some problems about recruiting staff, you want to talk about that. And you want to talk about that we anticipate, again, not having funds or not expending all the funds. And so we may be thinking about doing a budget revision because we've had maybe a lot of participation in activities and we need to sort of rearrange some of our spending. Again, you are not making the budget revision here. You are just sort of like letting Linda know that this may be coming down the pike after the APR. All righty. Okay. So we do provide a form. It's called a tool. It's called an optional budget reporting tool. If you choose to use this tool, it must include all the information. Wait, back up, reverse. If you choose to use your own form, then it needs to include all the information that is in this optional budget reporting tool. And we'll get into all of the different pieces of information that you'll need to provide. You will, whether it's your tool or this tool, you will upload this under your project narrative section B optional budget tool. And thanks again, that tool is actually in the chat right there. So let's look at the actual columns and rows that you will be completing. And so everything you see here in yellow is where you're going to be providing information. As you can see here on the column titled Available Funds, where it has all those zeros, that is, it's not yellow because it has calculations already locked in there. And so some of you may be going like, I can't change this number. Well, there's a plan. The idea is that it has a calculation where it's calculating the rows prior to. And so you want to make sure those are the only places where you can provide information. And so we do that so that it will automatically calculate for you and do the math. And so that's both for column list titled Available Funds, as well as the column titled Amount Estimated Remaining End of Year. Okay, if you look at columns Approved Budget, Funds Drawn Down from G5, and expenditures not yet drawn down, those are all numbers. Okay, so you should be putting all numbers into those columns. If you look at the column titled Rationale for Available Funds right here, that is actually words. And so you are going to provide words that describe why you have this amount in column E. Okay, in this column right here. So you're going to be explaining what's going on there, why you have available or remaining funds, and what you plan to do with that. The next column over, anticipated to be spent, that is actually, again, a number column. And so we should be seeing a number. And those funds are what you're expecting to expend between April 1st, 2024, and the end of the grant year, September 30th, 2024. And so hopefully it is the same number that is listed in this available funds, which would mean that you don't anticipate having any carryovers. However, if that's not the case, and you actually have a number that's being calculated in this column titled Amount Estimated Remaining at End of Year, then you are going to want, again, in this column titled Intended Use of Remaining Carryover Funds, want to provide words and a narrative regarding what you plan to do with the remaining carryover funds. Again, the goal is to expend all of your grant funds that have been allocated to a particular grant year. I know it may sound like fabulous to have, maybe have next year you have more money, but if you're having a challenge expending money in the current year, adding more money or carrying over more money into the next year may not be the best thing. Sometimes having more money can cause more headaches. And so the goal is really to use the funds expended. And you can, again, this is a great time to think about submitting a budget revision after you have completed your APR. Oh, sorry, let me go back here. If you do have any questions, you can go ahead and email the oie@seiservices.com and we'll help you. We do work with a lot of grantees that do a draft, and then we sit down and they send it to us. We can review it, and then they sign up for a coaching session, and we go over their draft with them. And then they go ahead and submit it into their APR. So I talked about those justification columns, those columns that you are actually going to be needing to provide a narrative to really describe why you have the amount in column E, so that available and remaining number, and how you plan to expend those monies during the remainder of the current grant year. And then again, that column I, which is about any kind of remaining funds at the end of the grant year, you're going to provide, again, more detail on where you plan to use any of those potential carryover funds in the next grant year. Okay, that is section B, and I'll turn it back over to Sarah for our next set of section B quizzes.
Yeah, so this first one is pretty easy. There's really no right or wrong answers on the first question. Do you plan to use the optional budget reporting tool? And then the others, these do have a right and wrong, so be ready. Do you need a section B budget narrative if you're using the optional budget reporting tool? Alternatively, if you use the optional budget reporting tool, do you need a section B budget narrative? So all three of those are going to magically appear up here. And our fourth question is on there as well. So while you're answering the three kind of yes, no's, I'll go into this final question. And Alani, if you can pop us for, there we go. So this is about the optional budget reporting tool. As you look at it, we've labeled each column A through I. You're just going to select which of those columns are you entering information into. So you'll see they're all listed. You can click as many as apply. Which are the columns you're entering info into? All right. Looks like we have one person with super fast fingers. They have already run through them all. Who will join them? Get your answers locked in. A few more seconds here. Start locking in those final choices. I know it's a lot of questions, but the first ones go pretty fast. It's either yes or it's a no. All right, we got about 75% of you have locked in some answers. So I'm gonna give you 5 more seconds. And then we're gonna go ahead and share our results. So it looks like all but one of you plan to use the optional budget reporting tool. So for that person, just remember, make sure that whatever tool you use of your own, it has all that same information. I will say that's the biggest hiccup that we see, is that for those who choose to use their own, often it doesn't include all of the required info. So just double check that. All right. Do you need a section B if you use the optional budget reporting tool? Yes, you do. You actually need both pieces, which gives you the answer to 3. If you use the tool, do you need the narrative? Yes. You need both the narrative and the tool for section B. All right. And then let's look at the answer to question 9. We're going to pop forward and be able to see that B, C, D, oh,
Sorry.
that's okay. F, G, and I. So it's basically all the ones you see that are empty. Those are the ones where you're going to be popping in info. Okay, so we did good on that one. All right, a few tips, a few pro tips. Make sure that you're submitting both the narrative and the tool, so you have all necessary information submitted. And remember that if you're not using the tool, all of that same info needs to be in there. Make sure that you're giving your program officer everything they need to know. And then really the biggest and most important tip is to talk with your budget office. When you send them that report asking for the drawdown, also let them know what other information are you going to need to know from them and for what reporting period, so that you have everything you need to complete this budget section. You know, if you have the ability, sit down with them and kind of walk through it. But this can take some extra time. So Set yourself up for success and set that up now.
Yeah.
So that then you're not frantically trying to get your budget office on board at the end of the reporting period.
Great
You're
suggestion.
in the final frontier.
Yeah, great suggestions are, because again, sometimes fiscal times and reporting periods may be different than the grant reporting periods, and so they need time to make sure they're getting the correct numbers for the correct time, the reporting time. So that's a great suggestion. I didn't see any questions in the chat, so we'll move forward. So section C. So this is the final section, and it should include any information that either didn't fit into maybe your executive summary or your section A and or B, and it doesn't have a home anywhere else. You might want to include photos or work. If some of you are maybe have a fabulous memorandum of agreement or data sharing agreement. Again, I know with STEP, you're more in like sort of that TEA mindset. You might want to provide some of the tools that you're utilizing. And so that's all great examples of that you can include. Also, I did news clippings. Maybe you've done, maybe there's been some press releases regarding your work that you've been trying to like engage community in. Maybe it's community meeting agendas or pictures from those meetings. Those are all really great shares. And it's some of the great stuff that we get to look through. Also in section C, you want to make sure you are making the opportunity to, again, document or highlight any success stories or challenges, provide any other appropriate information as it relates to your outcomes, including unanticipated outcomes or benefits from your project. You know, a lot of times we hear about some really great stories and impacts that are being made in community that weren't anticipated. And so this is a great place to not just share it, but also to document that for your own documentation, as well as to share that with with OIE. Sometimes you never know your sharing or your new learning and unanticipated outcomes may have an effect on maybe a talking circle or even, you know, the project directors meeting and what content we provide to to your fellow grantees during that time. And so please go ahead and share that. Also, you can include information that would not fit, like I said, in your executive summary or section A. And then everything, like any of the attachments, pictures, documents, maybe reports, or you want to sort of upload it as one PDF. So attach it all to your PDF. Now, we do have some grantees that maybe don't have the right tools to do that, or maybe have some questions about how to do PDFs and how to combine them all. And we can also assist with that. I see your question mark. I will take that question in just a sec. And so we also provide an optional section C reporting tool. This is, again, optional, but it's really helpful and allows you to provide information that's not provided anyplace else. If you choose not to use the tool, we also ask that you submit this in the same information in another format. And it can be a narrative format attached to section C, but we still like to really collect that information. And so what are the different pieces? And we'll briefly walk through this. First, you want to, again, provide your grantee name and the PR number and your project director. This is not, your responses to this is not sort of like long narrative responses. These are more short responses. Also, you can see that you want to really be able to provide us with how you are delivering your services. And we kind of skipped this top part. I want to go back to this little chart that says total number of unique adults. This is, again, you want to look at that time period. And so this the second column here, you're going to report the number up until for this grant reporting, for this APR reporting time, sorry. And then what you anticipate to the end of the year. And provide that information, as well as go ahead and list all the services that you provided during the year. Again, this could be a list. You can just like write down all the services or provide bullets. It doesn't have to be in a full on like narrative portion. And then answer the question, what if any language learning services are provided by your program and in what languages? This really helps OIE sort of get a view about any programs that may not be like Native American language grantee, but are also providing language services. This provides that additional information that's not found anywhere else. And then the other question is, what if any evidence-based services or strategies have been used in your program? All right. Additionally, here are some other questions for methods. Sorry. What if any evidence-based, oh, I did that one already. Here we go. List all partners and denote their current status. So the status would be active or inactive. And again, this can just be a list and right after maybe a name. So I'll say like, we're partnering with the state educational agency, the particular department, maybe let's say evaluations department, and that is an active partnership. So you can just indicate and just list it. Detail any key personnel changes or state no changes at all. And so maybe you've had program officer, project director, maybe you've had, project director change, or maybe your curriculum developer or your outreach person. Go ahead and provide that information. How do you plan to sustain program activities beyond the federal funding? You may be like, gosh, well, Lenny, we're in the first year of our grant and you're mentioning this already. This is actually, you should be thinking about this now. How you're going to be sustaining that. This is a great time to be thinking about that as you develop new partnerships and as you begin to embed your TEA activities into the system. Describe any planned changes to project activities for the remainder of the project year. Again, this goes back to maybe talking about the outreach. This is a great key for your program officer to, again, see if there's any changes. And then again, briefly state your greatest project success and your greatest project challenge. All righty. Oh, yeah, moving on to our final quiz time.
So you have to be ready for the final questions. Number 1, section C is a place for you to put any information that did not fit in the other sections. True or false? So this is definitely a fast finger one. Pop those answers in. All right. First person popped in quick. All right. We're going to go ahead and end that one. No one else had any thoughts on section C? But yes, it is true. That is where you're going to put that additional info. So if you ran out of room in your executive summary or in section A, pop that info right in there. That is also where you can put any additional info that just doesn't make sense in other areas, but that you want to share with Linda. All right, let's go to our next one. Question 11. If you submit the section C optional reporting tool, do you also have to submit a section C narrative? Similar to our question back in section B, do you need the narrative and the tool? All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to end it. And everybody said yes, but actually I have good news. If you use the reporting tool, you are not required to submit a narrative. You can if you have that other info you want to share, but as long as you complete that reporting tool, that's all the information that you need in section C. So you could just put that in and be all done. So a few final tips. Make sure that you're uploading everything as a PDF. Really, PDFs are the only thing that G5 can figure out. So otherwise it freaks out a little. So make sure it's a PDF. Make sure that you answer each question on the tool completely, but succinctly. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You'll notice some of them even really like drive home. We just want one sentence. So make sure you're answering the question, but don't feel like it has to be an essay. And finally, remember that this is where you can submit also stuff like maybe you have some great stuff from your evaluator. You were featured in an article. You have some pictures from your program. This is also the spot where you can put all of that stuff to really tell just a little bit more of your story.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Oh, looks like we have a question. Did I miss the answer to the G6 of it? No, I was going to take that right now. Thanks, Deidre. And so I just wanted to check with Linda if the G6 for STEP is open yet, and are they able to access it yet?
Yeah, it will be there by close of business tomorrow.
Okay, there you go.
The package will be uploaded.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Awesome. Okay, so let's move forward. I want to thank you for sticking with us. We're a little over time, but we're nearing the end. So just hold on one second. So what do you need? So these are the forms that that first column is the forms that are already in G6. Your cover sheet. So again, once you complete it, you want to download it, print it out, get that to your authorized representative. First. That's really, you really want to do that, have that be your first step. Also, section A is already in G6. So what's not in G6? And so these are all the forms that you will upload. And I know Inchin has been sharing that throughout in the chat throughout this session. And so that is, you want to upload your signed cover sheet. Once you get your authorized representative to sign, upload that back into G6. Your executive summary, your section B, that includes either your optional budget reporting tool or another fiscal report with numbers, with the same information required in your optional budget reporting tool, but maybe in your own format, as well as section C, the narrative or again, the optional section C tool. So if you choose to use the optional section C tool, you can just complete it and upload it. Or you can do the section C narrative. Make sure both of those, if you're providing those, are created into, actually all of it as PDs. I mean, not PDs, PDFs. Hello, Oleni. Okay. So continuation awards. So a final note about this. We started out by stating the purpose of APR is to determine if your program is making substantial progress and to make those decisions about continuation of awards. OIE makes every effort to process all continuation awards by the start date of your anticipated budget period. So that's for next year. However, grantees who do not submit on time, have missing information, and/or have not made substantial progress may experience a delay in receiving continuation awards. OIE will update you about any carryover requests. And remember, you should not assume your carryover requests are automatically accepted or approved. And so it's very important that you make sure you are submitting complete APR reports. One tool to use to make sure that it's complete and accurate is that checklist that was provided earlier in this session, and is also you can find on your Padlet. So it is very important to make sure you're providing all the information. Also, we will be including the PowerPoint in your Padlet, and once this recording gets put onto the OIE YouTube site, that will also be included in your Padlet. So Linda just shared when the G6 will be open. Only your grant project director of record is able to get into G6. And so if you've had some changes with your grant project director of record, you want to make sure today you are having a discussion with Linda and submitting the appropriate information so that she can change that project director and you will be able to access G6. Do not leave it until, the week before APR is due to make those changes, because it does take a little bit of time. G6 will not accept reports after the reporting deadline. And so that's why, again, I really want to emphasize that you take note of your time zone and the different times and make sure you are noting the due date as it pertains to your time zone. Make sure you're getting, and you know what? To create a stress-free, make your own deadline a week before the actual due date. And that way you don't have to stress if you have any technology glitches or maybe some uploading challenges. You will not be able to go into G6 after the reporting deadline hits to revise your report. Again, I said this checklist is really helpful, particularly as you are completing this, to just make sure you have all the different pieces in there. Here are our final sort of top tips. Don't wait until the last minute. That's what I just said. Make sure that your G6 login works. Make sure you have the right project director of record there. And as soon as it opens, like tomorrow, you may want to just go in and check around and check it out. Make sure you are familiar with the whole setup. Make sure your APR says is submitted with a date and time. That's one thing is sometimes, you load up everything into the APR, into the G6, and sometimes grantees, they look through, okay, I got all my documents. All right, I'm done. Make sure you click the button submit. And, sometimes you want to, that's why it's good to have some time before and submit it before the actual APR is due. Because sometimes people go ahead and they complete everything, but they don't hit that submit button. And so it's not submitted. And so if you go ahead and click the submit button and then exit out of G6 and then enter back in, just again to make sure that it has actually been submitted. And if you have any technical difficulties with the submission, that you are again going to that help desk number or email on G6 and contacting them. Really, this is your time to share and to tell your story. So take that time, give yourself time to write this out. Make sure that you're sharing everything that's going on with your grant and really be able to articulate and show your substantial progress. APR report is really important, but remember, it really is one piece in sort of an ongoing communication you should be having with your program officer, Linda, in order to just bring her along. This hopefully is not the first time you're talking to her through your APR, that you've been conversing with her regarding, your project measures, maybe some budget revisions, maybe some challenges that you've been having along the way. I know she's been reaching out to you, so you want to make sure you're having that ongoing conversation, and the APR is part of that process. I really want to thank you for hanging in there. And again, I know we've gone over. I'm going to just check the chat to see if there's any questions as we put up an end of the event poll. And I don't see any questions. So as you're completing that, we'll just sort of go to wrap up today's APR. Again, just a reminder of when your APR is due, April 26, 2024. Check that time zone, make sure you're getting it in on time. At 4:30 Eastern time, your APR is late and it will shut down. If you have any questions, go ahead and if you have any other people you want to include on your talking circles or want to update your email list, go ahead and share the name, role, and email address and email that to oie@seiservices.com. Oh, thanks. And Injin put that right there. Also, if you have any questions, maybe you're getting into this APR and you're like, okay, I need a coaching session. Injan shared that Calendly, go ahead and reserve some time to have a one-on-one. Sometimes some grantees like finish their section A and maybe their budget, and they share it in that request, and they go ahead and schedule that time to have some one-on-one and review. Here are some upcoming events. So we do have an April APR talking circle coming up on April 11th. That talking circle will be for all grantees, and it will be all about APRs. And so again, if you have any questions, you want to go ahead and get on there. Also, we have some monthly office hours coming up, March 28th. We get a lot of people asking questions. If you don't have a question, we do have a lot of grantees that just come in and sit in and listen to hear other grantees' questions. We also have an April 25th, but that's a little bit too close to the due date. And so you really should be reaching out before April 25th if you have any like burning questions, or just maybe maybe they're not burning, maybe you just want to check and make sure you're doing everything appropriately. Again, monthly office hours are pop in, pop out. You can ask your questions and pop on out, or you can just listen in, and they're normally held on the fourth Thursday of every month. Whew. Alrighty, so that leads us to the end of your STEP APR webinar. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, there is the contact information for Linda Brake, your program officer, as well as the technical assistance team. Also remember to follow us at X, formerly known as Twitter, at OIE Indian Ed. Not only do we share information coming out about what's going on at OIE, but also information across the broad landscape of Indigenous education. And so thank you so much. If you do reach out to either Linda or the technical assistance team, we do ask that in the subject line of your email that you do include your grantee name and PR number. That really helps us sort of focus in, because some of you have multiple grants. So it helps us focus in and prepare for your questions. Thank you again for sticking with us. We went over time. If you have any questions, contact us, and have a wonderful rest of your day.